Okay, it says we're live. I really wonder if we are. Hello, good evening, bienvenue. Welcome to Drone Stuff this week, fashionably late as ever. Good evening, Gene, Jonathan, Patrick, and Robert joining us for the first time. How are we all doing, guys?
Well, thank you.
Very good. All right, first port of call then is to pull out the drone forecastinator, and let's get this right one here. Here we go. So it's a forecast this evening for the power and pipeline inspection industry. That's the power pipeline and inspection industry. My wife's a sculptor, and it means weirdly we have lots and lots of weird stuff in the house, which is lots of dice. So I shall roll some dice, and the number this evening for power and pipeline is, it's only a 7-digit number, 224435. So we expect them to earn in power and pipeline this week 224435. Another SUS News in-depth market number.
Is that 2 million or 2 billion? Did you leave the zeros off?
No, I didn't. Did I leave a zero? I can add. Which side would you like me to add the zero, Gene?
Oh, this is scientific.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's fully. Oh, hang on. I better power and pipeline. Actually, all joking aside, that probably is one of the bigger industries that's coming our way. Inspection of stuff. I'd like to start this week by calling out Patrick. He's turned over a new leaf. Patrick, you seem to have gone over to what is the dark side for yourself and have actually praised the FAA. Perhaps you'd like to run us through that.
Well, I did not slip and fall and hit my head. So if anyone was wondering if there was like some kind of medical thing, it's not. No, I've been through the 107 thing. I've got I passed the test. I'm waiting for my card. I got the temporary. To be honest, being in this process as long as I have been, it could have been a lot worse. I've been waiting around to kind of gauge everyone's, let's say, yay or nay on the 107 thing. I haven't heard as many kudos as I thought we would hear. But I think of it and people say, oh, well, I'm not going to still be able to do whatever. I mean, out of the gate, I think they gave us something that's really workable. And if you want to play any game or be in any business, you need some basic rules to play by, and we got them. So, we have, it may not be everything you wanted. Yes, it took a long time. It may not be perfect, but there's plenty to work with. So I think what it does is give us here in the United States a framework to, let's say, employ our creativity and our entrepreneurial spirit and go out there and make some dough. We'll have to see what happens. I kind of liken it to the railroad. We are here in Sacramento. The railroad come in where we can't all be Crockers and Stanfords, but a lot of people made money off of the railroad. And I think that we have that chance now with drones. And, I'm going to throw it out to the FAA that, there were people predicting that this was going to be a disaster and the TSA thing was going to be backed up for 6 months and the test was going to be, the website was going to go down and blah, blah, blah. But, by and large, it went down without any hiccups. And, you have to at least give them some credit. And I've been one of the biggest critics of the FAA through the last, well, one of the bigger, probably not the biggest, but one of the bigger ones for the last 10 years. And, they pulled it off. So you got to give them some credit. I'm fair. If nothing else, I'm fair.
It's true. And Jonathan, are you seeing, are they getting business done with clearances and stuff like that? Is that all going through?
So far there have been, I believe, 9 authorizations have been granted and 4 waivers, I believe, have been granted so far since August the 29th that are like they're post 29th filed, not this like 333 converted over stuff. So there is some movement on that going on right now. I can pull up the numbers here that I had last. And so they are moving. There is a fairly large amount of people applying for airspace authorizations. The largest group tends to be the Class Delta airport. So that's kind of been interesting. It's almost that one's probably about 50% of all the authorizations that are being requested are just Class Delta airports. So pulling up my stats here.
Well, I guess at the end of it. Sorry, after you, Gene.
The authors.
I was going to ask, if the waivers that you've seen for Class Delta airspace, don't they still, as a part of the waiver, have to contact the tower?
Let me read a class. Let's see. I have a right here in front of me. I just pulled up authorization pulled up in front of me, and the restrictions are that. Let's see, it's not really that bad compared to what we used to have. So the individual there's a designated individual. He's responsible for the overall safety of the unmanned aircraft operation under the COA. And during UAS operations and on-site communication recall, the pilot will continuously be available for direct contact. And then they have the phone number for the airport. And it's between civil sunrise to civil sunset, and it lasts for almost about looks like 8 months or so is what this authorization is lasting for. If the UAS loses communication or loses its GPS signal, the UA must return to a predetermined location within the operating area and land. The PIC must abort the flight in the event of unpredicted obstacles or emergencies. So that's about it. It's very, very basic. That's very site-specific airspace authorization and a Class D. If you're going to start operating like in the donut hole, then that's going to get a little bit more difficult to obtain.
Okay, and for those of us non-America, Class D airspace, is that where most people live? Is that where your big cities are?
They're around big cities, but they tend to be like small little airports. The best way to kind of think of them is between the D's, the C's, and the B's. It's probably like the dorky, the congested, and the busy. The dorky are kind of wanting to be like the C's and the B's, but they're not. They're like these little small airports at the tower. They tend to be outside the larger B's and C's. That's the best way. They're kind of smaller little airports scattered around. So they're not that serious in congestion compared to the Bravos and the Charlies.
Yeah, and they're typically also only daylight to dusk operations for towers since they've got back on.
Okay, so Patrick's happy, you're happy, but I noticed this week you've also been telling us, Jonathan, that we've got to look out for dodgy fellows. And I guess that's true of any business when it starts up. And I thought your the bottom line in the thing that you put up, that you'll look out. In conclusion, no industry will look out for you, and this applies to drones too. So you're probably all pro getting your ducks in a row before you get into the business.
Right. I think anybody getting into the business or is involved with anybody should start doing due diligence beforehand and even while they are doing business with them, because there are a lot of interesting individuals that have come into this industry from other industries. So that is it's problematic. There's a lot of those that have come in. So I highly suggest everyone listening go and do check that article out and kind of do a inventory of who you're dealing with now, and then do a check on them. Just see what's up.
That's good advice. I would say, there's, and I wrote some of that in the article, that Business of Drones article that I wrote. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, doing the prep, the 107 prep classes. I mean, the prices are across the board. There are people doing other classes on SAR. There are people doing classes on cinematography. There are classes on everything. And, I would say that a lot of people, their qualifications are questionable. Same with some of the stuff as far as these waivers, getting help and things like that. People are, I'm going to have to spend thousands of dollars. I talked to Johnny Drone Guy, and he told me, you really have to do your research or you're going to get taken for a ride.
Yes, you will.
It's in industry. What doesn't matter what industry it is, it's going to happen, isn't it? And another thing that you flagged up, Jonathan, was something that Terry Miller, another friend of ours, went through. I was hoping he'd join us, but he hasn't. The UAS insurance salvage. He reckons that's another big opportunity. What were your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
That was a whole untapped market right there. That I was just thinking, I'm like, you could just buy a bunch of these drones and just scrap them and make a lot of money. I was kind of surprised that nobody's really started a business just kind of refurbishing them or selling the parts off. I know there's probably a lot of liability involved, but there's just a lot of gold lying there. That's what I was seeing. I was like, wow, they get it for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, but I got an issue with that. I mean, I would. This would be my thinking as a professional. Anything has gone through let's say, a severe mishap or crash, that equipment would always be suspect to me. I would never feel. Yeah, well, not dead, but it would be very suspect. I would never feel. I mean, I can't feel 100% now about the stuff because most of it doesn't have redundancy and things like that. But if something's going through a severe crash, the board could have a crack in a solder. You get some vibration. Something could happen, and I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to deal with that. I mean, it sounds good on one hand. I get cheap drones, but the drones are pretty cheap as it is.
Yeah, I think that's. After Eugene.
One of the things, and I have to say, Jonathan made me kill a big bunch of my afternoon because I was looking at all those airplanes that they had there as well. But as a pilot, have you ever tried to go back or have heard of anyone who has tried to go back and recertify a crashed full-scale airplane? You want to talk about having to jump through the hoop.
There was a joke there, but it's a family show.
Right. Well, right. I agree. I wouldn't be using post-crash aircraft for like sensitive situations, but there are times where it doesn't really matter if the drone is somewhat questionable. If you're out doing real estate photography in the middle of Kansas, when there's one like house there, and it's like it crashes into the field next door. That's about the only thing I could think of. There will be some opportunities where
don't those houses in Kansas crash on witches? But anyway, that's another thing. No? Yeah, no, my age there. But I think that the perhaps the problem is that as Patrick touched on there, price of the equipment goes down and technology improves. So you might be refurbishing 2 or 3 year old gear that really, well, is it going to be worth it in the end? But it's an interesting thought. It's something that's got to be addressed, and certainly you can probably see the stuff ending up coming here to Africa.
Well, and I wouldn't throw it totally out of, that might be something where, schools might buy that stuff for, the kids to learn on, or maybe even learn how to do repairs. I'm not going to say it's a totally bad idea, because I thought the same thing when I saw the picture. I'm like, ooh, sign me up. I could add a couple of drones to the collection, really, get the wife to threaten to throw me and the drones out of here. I mean, come on, we all saw the box thinking, well, I got about 2 last now. And there is an opportunity there. I would just, if I was going to go out and do something professional, I'd probably be like, but there's a time and a place for it. I don't want to be, Debbie Downer on that one.
If you recall, when we were in that show at Florida, Jonathan, there was I'm not going to name the manufacturers, but they made a request for anyone who would take on their RMA and their repair system in return for keeping all the junk, keeping all the stuff that came in, because they mentioned that they had truckloads, literally truckloads of equipment that was sent in for repair, and a lot of it was because of operator error, because of things that they couldn't identify, or something very simple. And having had some acquaintance in the junk industry, if you will, you can go into these things and you can buy literally tons of usable equipment at pennies on the dollar.
Mm.
And if you're doing research and development, if you're testing aircraft, if you're wanting to fly stuff and you're in a situation where you can use that stuff, it is a literal bonanza. So
I've seen. I once had to get I had a Garmin GPS, and they're sealed units, a gas sealed units, those handheld GPSs. And I went to the manufacturing place, or not the service place in the UK. And when I went in, they took this it was a Garmin 90 I had, and they chucked it. They had all these bins, and they chucked it in the bin, and it was stacked full of GPSs, and I couldn't believe it. And just the amount of gold, for instance, in the connectors that will be in there. You know, it's harvestable amounts of gold and stuff in there, if nothing else. So maybe that's a good reason for the salvaging the gear.
That's a good question for Robert. That picture had it looked like a red under that crashed, and so I'm just wondering, like, with the higher end cameras, like how likely are they to survive the crashes?
Well, something like that, I mean, to be carried out there, when you looked at that picture, it was completely demolished, not only the camera, but the lens, and that's thousands of dollars that just goes straight in the garbage. I don't think you're going to get those sent back to the manufacturer and have them refurbish that and get it back out on the market in that condition. From that accident, that's just not really salvageable. And it's, I agree with, a little bit agree and disagree with what everyone's saying. It's one of those things that if you're going to do this in any professional environment, you probably want to start off with something that you know and trust and not risk it, because if it's going to become your livelihood, it's not worth trusting someone else's trash, if you will.
So we're not all going to start a recycling business, and have we decided that now then?
No.
All right. Okay. So I can't make an industry forecast for it then. Blast. That was another category. So Gene,
zero.
You've not, zero. The forecast is
Use 5 less dye.
Yeah. So Gene, you not quite been recycling, but you are trying to work out how to fix solar panels to wings at the moment. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your solar adventures that are coming.
I will, and this comes on the heels of our 400-kilometer flight that we did with the Vigilant C1 in New Zealand. But one of the sponsors and the exhibitors at the SUSB Expo was Alta Devices, and Alta Devices very kindly, they did the Puma that you see in the picture there, and it was great for them. It flew a long time, but that's a military aircraft, and it doesn't do them a whole lot of good. So we approached them about using the C1 for a solar platform, and they agreed. And I am now showing you the picture here, the proud recipient of. Look at how thin those cells are.
Yeah. And what size is that?
Well, we're going to end up with 63 watts of power. We've got 6 of these panels that we will be affixing to the aircraft. Puts out about 25 volts. And we've got the switches. We're going to be doing some switch modification and that sort of thing. We're going to use a smart switch so that when the aircraft is not drawing off the solar panels themselves, it'll actually recharge the battery.
Now, I know you're an incredibly strong fellow, Gene, and so lifting that would be no issue at all for you. But what sort of weight is that?
I would say that's probably about 90 grams.
Right. Okay.
90 grams for that. Yeah, it's very lightweight, very thin, and we're pretty excited about moving forward with this one. And of course, it's kind been go on the road for a while, so it's going to be probably several weeks before I can get them onto a plane. But pretty excited about getting them, and we're looking forward to doing this, and hopefully we'll go from dawn till dusk, if not
I
a
guess
little longer.
it'd be interesting to see, because you guys are going into winter now, so it'd be interesting to see if you can, what efficiencies you can get out of a system on a grey day, on a winter's day. If you get, do you even get that in Texas? Am I speaking out of turn?
Oh, no. It gets, we have 2 seasons. We have summer and not summer. And in the not summer part of it, we sometimes get clouds.
Okay.
Yeah, that the Alta devices. I'll add that. I mean, I've been they've been supporters of the Small Unmanned Systems Business Expo. They're great guys. They actually make those or grow those solar cells off of silicon wafers, and they do it right here in Silicon Valley. The factory is very impressive. I mean, really impressive. The Puma thing, do we want the backstory on the Puma thing? Or do we not want the backstory on the Puma
Go
thing?
on. Well, oh, you've done it now, haven't you? Remember, complaints to. Go ahead with the backstory.
That's Gary. No. The backstory is the company was bought out by a Chinese conglomerate. And, of course, then AeroVironment was like, can't work with you. And that's why they're probably the main reason why they're not still working with them, because the tests were all successful.
Oh, without
Puma
the
has
devices, we didn't know that. I don't think we knew that. Okay.
Yeah, big Chinese solar conglomerate came in, and I think is like the big, either bottom or is the major shareholder.
Well, because their
Because it was all
panels are,
successful.
yeah, I mean, they're 31%. It was their efficiency, wasn't it? They're kind of way ahead of the rest, aren't they? So they're great panels.
Really are.
They are, and like I said, the process, the guys that came up with, I mean, you know, at first I was like, oh my God, these things are outrageously expensive, until I went to the factory and realized that they were actually made in Silicon Valley. They grow these on chips. The process was developed by the 2 partners, and even the manufacturing process was designed by the 2 partners. I was impressed. I was blown away, man. I was like, wow, it's something else. That's for sure. I will say that. I was very impressed.
And Gene, something else that caught your eye, and you had the audacity, and I didn't want to go down that line of suggesting that it's something American, was swarms. And you said swarms are going to be a big thing.
Now look, I did not have the audacity to suggest that we came up with the idea of a swarm. As you so pointedly pointed out, yes, we understood that the Germans used drone swarms very early in the 40s. I got it, Gary. I got it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got that. That's good. But Intel are into this.
I'm just saying that, one of the arguments that we've had for the longest time that, if you got a big area to cover, go get a manned aircraft. Or if, that sort of thing, go to a manned aircraft. As we get this swarm technology where you get the cheap little Mavics and stuff like that, and I hate to go all Star Trek on you, but, if you get the collective out there in space where you can throw them up and they'll join the collective, I mean, come on, they'll work.
Yeah.
They communicate one to the other. And we kind of pitched this, Patrick and I talked about this 10 years ago, being able to transmit.
Sorry, Gene. This becomes a legal thing. You see, the SenseFly guys have had that working since 2012 on their GCS, but of course, we're all going to be operating under the regulations or rules, which is Jonathan's gambit of one UAS, one operator, and that's going to. So the technology's there, but it's going to be knocked out of its track by regulations. So maybe Robert and Jonathan could add something about what their thoughts on that might be.
Robert, you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
You'll do well here.
Yeah. So primarily, there's only two companies that have been granted waivers to do swarms, and it's Intel. And there's also another company over in Stone Mountain, Georgia, that's supposed to be doing like kind of like a night show with their laser light display. Those are the two that have been granted so far. So there is the legal possibility. You're just going to have to get a waiver. What's interesting to note is that the Intel one was the one that they were granted was specifically for operations within pretty much restricted airspace, while the Stone Mountain, Georgia one was not. So that was kind of the big, I guess, differentiating factor. And they're both, I guess, compound waivers is the better way to put it, where they're swarm at night at the same time.
Well, of course, I forgot, and I've just remembered now. I could have pulled up, and Gene gave me a great lead-in for it, the Star Trek analogy, because in the same week, I think it was in 2010, in London, that the FAA said we've got 2 aircraft operating at night within a danger area. In the same week in London, they flew that Star Trek swarm. It's like, look at this. This is underneath the approach to Heathrow at a range of 12 miles, where the aircraft are at 1,200 feet above it in range. So the guys from Ascending Technology are really, they're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else with that. But swarming in our world and in the mapping world, yeah, for sure. Big fields, 2 or 3 aircraft over the big areas, job done, quick sticks, and off to the cloud.
Well, I think there's a great practical thing for that as well in the cinematography world, visual effects and things of that nature, where you're taking advantage of these multiple aircrafts up in the sky at the same time from multiple different angles, reducing the amount of time that the stunt person has to be out there in multiple takes for the same thing, reducing risk. So, yeah, we've been talking about this with a few different companies as well, and I know that out here in Hollywood, there's a few studios that are really anxious about being able to test this out and putting it in use for stunts.
And you've got to be in a really advantageous position, because within a closed set, of course, it is what it says on the tin. It's a closed set, so there's less risk to the general public. So I would have thought it would have been a very interesting real-world place to test that sort of thing.
Yeah, you would think so, but it's still sort of new technology. And I think before 333 and 107, when everything was more self-regulated, I was seeing a lot more, I want to say taking risks, but I think people getting a lot more adventurous with the use of drones. Now that everything has reached a point where everyone is understanding what's happening with regulations, and studios are sort of shying away from their use of drones in certain places more and more. And they're basically understanding now what questions to ask. And because of that, they are staying away from things that they probably would have tried just 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll only be a short amount of time before someone actually tries this out as well. And you're right, because it's a closed set, because everything is there and controlled, it's definitely a good testing case for it.
And before we go any further, I just have to say, someone saying out there in Hollywood, out here in Hollywood, that's just insanely cool. So someone sat in a small village in Africa. But anyway, moving on very swiftly.
It only sounds cool if you're not from here or are working here every day. But yeah,
just sounded really cool. One of the things that I noticed this week, and I think we're going to have a mini trend, and it can only be a mini trend because there's only so many companies operating in this space. But Trimble got rid of their flying wing interests, which interested me no end. Did anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Confusion.
I saw that as well, and it's going to be the movers and shakers, and that there's big money involved when they start passing companies around like this. And I think Trimble probably sees the handwriting on the wall that you're going to have to settle in and be pretty well established in the UA market. I mean, that's my take on it.
Well,
they're going to.
Well, go ahead, Gene. Sorry.
Well, they're going to stick with their core competencies, which UA is not one of their core competencies.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, I'm going to say that it is surprising, and some of the things I've been tweeting out about the conjecture merchants, and people are probably wondering what that is. But there were a lot of people saying, even before the rule, we're going to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight and things like that, which was dreaming. company like Trimble, the only thing I can think of is, hey, you know what? For this really to make money, make sense for a $2 billion company like us, really have to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight. That's not happening anytime soon. And they may have offloaded this, kind of like the example when Evergreen offloaded all of their Scan Eagles to VT Group. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I think people realized, hey, there might be more to this and really we can handle. We're not going to be able to, the operating envelope is not going to be as big as we thought. It's going to be hard to pull this off. Maybe we can come back and revisit this in a few years. That's what I think the move says. I don't think the move says we're killing it and we're making so much money we don't know what to do with ourselves.
Yeah, it's true. I just thought it was always going to be a good hookup between GPS vendor as such and other technologies. They have the software, and they just thought perhaps they thought they could just bolt on the hardware and that would be good enough. But the hardware was a little bit harder than they thought, and also the outrageous prices they were quoting for bits of foam. Really, obviously, Gene's a manufacturer of wings, and I don't mean to offend him, but at the end of the day, the hardware is done now. It is done. And it works, and it's the magic source is in the software that produces the actionable data. And yeah, maybe they didn't sell enough of those super expensive systems. All I ever hear about those in EBs are there are more of those on shelves doing nothing because the engineers are too afraid to fly the boss's toy because they know how expensive it is, and if they crash it, they'll be in deep doo-doo. So they just sit on the shelves doing nothing. So there has to be a price point where, or I'm in rant mode, aren't I? There has to be a price point where people accept flying the unmanned aircraft or accept the risk of doing it to do whatever the job is. Out in Hollywood, I suppose, Robert, there's no price point that's too high. There's endless cash out there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our faucets over here run gold.
Now you're going to get the real lesson. Go, Robert, go.
Yeah, no, I don't, because of the people that have the romance and everything with Hollywood in the industry, I don't want to shatter anyone's dreams that wants to come out here and be a filmmaker.
It could be a public service announcement, Robert. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Stay in school. Don't spend the money on camera.
I've just advised a kid to do that. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, you better find him and do right by him. No, I love the industry. It's the only thing I've ever known. It's what I started off doing, and I like to say I was drafted into this because I never wanted to be in this industry, but I can't think of any other job I'd like to do now. Sadly, it's not what it used to be, where endless amounts of cash are thrown into these shows to get them done, or these features. There are some features that will spend a fortune on things over here, but it always seems still that they'll need to cut corners, and they try to save on things that are important, like finding the right drone team, to go out there. So that's like what Jonathan is saying too, with do your research on the phony dronies and that for the legal side of things. It's the same advice that we have to give the people here in the world of cinema. Unfortunately, it's not free-flowing cash.
How many, realistically, and being honest, how many successful operators are there in Hollywood? Are there 100 companies or are there 10 companies?
No, it's more like 10. I mean, there are definitely hundreds of companies that are trying to take advantage of the market, and sadly, that's my dislike of 107 is that there are going to be hundreds more now that'll be able to take try to at least take a piece of the pie and probably drive the cost of the market down. But realistically, that are out there in the market making money, that actually know the film etiquette, how to behave on set and how to work with the team, they're probably only about anywhere from 10 to 15 companies total.
And what's the? Sorry, Patrick.
Well, and I do think there's I teach this motion picture and television, and I think a lot of the kids do think, I'm going to go and I'm going to make money, and this is going to be great, and I'm going to be part of the magic. From personal experience in the early 2000s, I tried my Hollywood stint and to do TV shows, cable TV shows, and I found out rather quickly I couldn't afford to work there. Man, it's just it is a tough game. you got to be willing to work hard and pay your dues, and you're going to have to go the extra mile. If you think you're just going to show up with a drone or something else and that you're going to get hired and you're going to be out there working for Spielberg, I think you have delusions of grandeur.
Well, that's sort of the advice that I gave this youngster recently was, you know, survey's really what you want to do with a drone, and go out and become a surveyor first, become an expert in that and really know what you're talking about. So the same will go with Hollywood, I guess, you know, go out and learn the film industry and learn whatever, power pipeline inspection engineers, whatever it is. You know, you've got to know the industry, because the drone itself is going to do the work. There's going to be no skill involved in flying the thing very, very shortly. And that links all the way back round to Gene's formation flying, because it's going to use the same sensors and all that sort of thing. The flying part of this is going to be gone in 2 or 3 years' time. To be, say, you're a drone pilot is going to be meaningless. You're going to be, in my opinion, an expert in a particular field, and you'll use the drone as a hammer from your toolbox for whatever task you do. So I ranted again, didn't I?
I would disagree with that, Gary. I would disagree with that.
Okay, then. You would.
It's because look at the camera. Look at how far the camera has come. And I'm sure that there was probably someone in your position back in the day that said, oh, you know, chroma key is going to take away the director of photography's job because the color is going to be balanced and yada, yada, yada on down the line. And no matter what the technology is, you still got a director of photography out there. He's setting the shot. He's getting the light right. The camera doesn't decide everything, right? Am I right or am I wrong? Robert, you tell me.
No, you're right. There's not one shoot that's going to be out there that you don't have a DP or director of photography on this. The camera doesn't do everything. It's something that we preach and teach at all of our workshops, that if you don't know how to operate these things on the ground, you have no business taking them in the sky. So you're absolutely correct. You still need the trained people that are going to be able to operate the cameras. Now, on the flight side of things, I think, Gary, what you're saying is partially accurate, and that's part of the issues with the industry, is that, yes, out of the box, they're taking off and they're flying themselves, and everyone's a self-proclaimed cinematographer.
Until and then what?
Until, well,
we don't know how to deal with the exceptions are going to be the ones. The 10,000 hour rule applies for flying unmanned aircraft or anything else. If you're going to be an expert, go look up the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, no, I hear that, but I think so in certain circumstances, perhaps in Robert's world in Hollywood, where it's a big, heavy camera and it's a big rig, you're going to need some more skills because they're going to want you to save that camera. But when you come down to building inspection and stuff like that, I think there's going to be stacks of very, very capable sub 1 kilo machines very soon that will be cheap enough that, okay, it has to get itself out of the accident and plant itself into somewhere safe, but it can do that by itself, and you go down to Best Buy and get another one. I really do think that'll happen. Gene doesn't want that to happen.
I don't know about that. I mean, that was my panel kind of discussion at SBIEF was, remember Asimov's law of robotics? The robot's not going to harm a human and all the rest of it. How, and I asked this question on my panel, I had drone people, I had robotics people on there. As these systems make it out into, let's say, the world with people, how do you program in, and even in that scenario, and I know what you're saying, Gary, but if you've got multiple people in an area and you have an issue, so it may dodge Billy, but then hit Susie or Johnny, you know, and I kind of made that analogy, and I'm not deriding. We'll just call them a big company with lots of letters in their name, whatever, that have their driverless car. I mean, I just don't know how are you going to, there's like 23 letters in their name now. How are you going to program the car not to hit the kids or the nuns or...
Say it!
That's Gary at it. No.
Yes.
Anyway, or the person that bought the car, so you get the person in the car. Is that person's life worth more than the kids or the nuns or the Girl Scouts or whatever? And I think that's going to be almost impossible to program, and I think that and as I said in this panel, that this Asimov's laws of robotics may be just some old-fashioned notion that we will just not be able to achieve, and we may just have to accept some of this risk.
Well, a lot of stuff is happening in parts of the world where there aren't any people. I'll take here. I am here. There was a light aeroplane buzzing around today, and we never see them. We don't see light aircraft here for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So for me to have to obey, calling airports or all sorts of rules is a bit ridiculous. There's great swathes of Australia where people aren't. Robert's in a different place to a lot of us because the people that he might hit on set are valuable people, and those people will be calling Jonathan fast if they get hit by something. So that's a different order of risk. But I think you can add on skills in populated areas and stuff like that, and that'll mitigate the risk. But in most of the world, the drones don't need to be that clever. I really don't think they need to be that clever, and they'll be cheap enough. They'll be disposable in a couple of years. They'll be disposable.
I don't disagree with that, but I do disagree with the fact that the wind is going to blow. There's going to be people standing in front of it. There's going to be something get in the way. You still got to learn how to fly the damn thing and get it out of trouble.
Hey, look, it's not me that's saying you shouldn't have to learn to fly. It's your FAA. You haven't got a handling test on the thing. You can take a 107 and you can go and buy a thing and you can go and fly it. It's not my fault. Don't blame me. Nothing to me.
Stand down there, Afrikaner. We're working on it.
But you don't want to see our flight test here is ridiculous. So there's no practical benefit, isn't it?
I agree. I mean, I think it's going to get. It's kind of interesting. Some people, it's got to get easier. I don't think it can get any easier, and I do think that a practical. As the 107 thing kind of goes on, I think some kind of practical, even if you had to send in a video, hey, this is me doing a selfie video. I can, take off, I can land, I can do basic maneuvers, something that you know how to fire it up and launch it. I think that's going to be something.
Just to add a quick thing here, I did one of those Facebook Live things today, which is just weird and extraordinary. And who would have thought, even 5 years ago, that you could launch a platform from a field in South Africa and have it streaming to people or live video all around the world just with stuff it's just mad. Every time I do this, and I say something that amazes me, but I'm continually amazed by what you can do now. It just blows my mind. And I had to do that push-ups thing. So you guys you're all in the crosshairs for doing these 22 and 22 push-ups. So
I saw that. Pretty soon you're going to be ripped. It's going to be great. I think on day 20, next thing Derry turns into this fitness nut. It's going to be good. Now the other thing, when you were streaming your video on Facebook, were you like in Lower Manhattan doing zany stuff and going nuts?
Oh yeah.
And flying beyond visual line of sight.
Yeah.
Okay. Flying by the heliports and the seaplane ports and the devil may care.
Oh yeah, no, the geese down the bottom were very upset. There were some hardy-dars over the way that didn't enjoy it, and it's mandatory. What are you referring to, Patrick? There, you're not referring to somebody that's recently lost a platform in New York, are you?
I am, and the thing is, this is another thing, and me and Jonathan speak on the phone, so me and Gene, and sometimes Robert, although he's hard to get a hold of.
I can just hear some English teacher somewhere is listening, going, ah! Going wait, it's Gene and I as Patrick.
Okay, all right.
Anyways.
Jeez, Louise. I'm not calling you anymore.
We don't have anyone here called Louise.
Well, anyway, so the thing is you talk to people in this, the enforcement part of it, the 107 thing and the enforcement part of it, that is another thing that I'm starting to see is there's a lot of people, as I even put in my article, I don't really fly the drone. or I'm not really making money with this because, some guy named Guido or whatever didn't come over and hand me $10. But, the guy in the video, he's obviously getting payment out of this deal, either in-kind services or whatever. He's willy-nilly. I'm a little disappointed in the companies. Obviously they know how to get in touch with this guy. They send him stuff. Oh, we're all about safety, and we're going to start geofencing because we want to be safe. And then they send some knucklehead, and he's probably going to do a video. Oh, somebody called me a knucklehead. Some knucklehead, a drone, he flies it around totally unsafely, flies away, whatever else, so they can have 1.5 million views. And then all the people that watch that, then they talk about safety and responsibility. How many of those 1.5 million people that watch that think, oh, I should go buy a drone and emulate this guy and fly around wherever I want willy-nilly? I think it's counterproductive, and I think it shows some of the companies to be reckless. That's how I think about it. Anybody want Gary at SUAS News?
Well, before anyone else joins in, what I'll say is I made that video now 4 months ago about what I think should happen to him, and I have had, count them, 3 emails that suggest I should no longer live on this earth. And I've been able to reply to them in the affirmative that they will eventually get their wish. That will happen. So that's a very positive thing for them. Yeah, they might have to wait, but that will happen. So that's a great thing for them. So if you do shout out about Casey Neistat, my word, a lot of hate comes your way. But anyway, I stopped the flow. Anyone else got any thoughts on Casey? No one wants the death threats. No one wants the hate mail.
Yeah, I get enough email as it is. No, I think I would say with him on this, I agree with what Patrick is saying. It's dangerous when you start to see people and your idols out there, be them TV stars or YouTubers as they call them, all these social media sensations going out there and doing these. The kids do want to emulate them, and they do want to do this. So they do hold a responsibility to their viewers to at least put a disclaimer that they're out there. There's someone next to them watching this. This is quote unquote a closed set or under supervision. Because a lot of these things, you showed the Karma video as well, where you had GoPro there with him.
Mm-hmm.
There was a representative from GoPro there eyeing everything. On the Mavic side of things, unfortunately, it got away. Yes, the videos and things he showed were a lot of things that he definitely should not have been doing. But, when you have so many people encouraging this and he's got tons of hits and viewers, it's sort of hard for him not to play to the audience. So I could...
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Robert. I interrupted. Carry on.
No, I was just saying it's really difficult for him not to play to the audience, especially if he's making a living off of this now. He's been doing this for a long time, and I'm not condoning it, but I understand what it's like, because it's the same thing that happens on sets and things over here. You don't ever want to say no to your fans.
Yeah, and that's true. Oh, go ahead, Gary. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that I ran the stats when I did that thing, and I looked at the followers that every aviation authority that I could find that has a YouTube channel has. And John Olson, who was the guy who was on stage for the Mavic launch, between him and Casey, they had so many times more followers than all the aviation authorities together. So if those guys were to just put out just to preach a safe message, rather than call on Jonathan to have to defend them for some huge $1,100 a time fine sort of situation for every infraction that's found, if they were made to create a safety message, and it would go out to far more people than our regulatory authorities reach. That's just my take on it. They should be made to.
I agree, and I'm going to go further. There was a lot of controversy, let's say, with the drone film festivals, and I beat up the guys in New York because they had that video from the Mexico City airport. And yes, there was a disclaimer in the beginning of that. People kept showing the video and outtakes of the video, and I'm like, hey, this is a problem. People flying drones near an airport. Oh, well, there's a disclaimer. Okay, well, how many of the 4 million people plus that watch that read the disclaimer in Spanish? Not a lot,
I was going to try and pull Jonathan in because I know he's not going to answer anything about this because it's legal stuff, and he never talks about legal stuff. But just in case somebody does end up in trouble, can you just go through how the FAA might rack up fines with you? Because I believe it's $1,100 a time for every infraction that they have sort of outlined or discovered. Am I right in thinking that, or completely wrong? How would the fining process work?
Yeah, the fining process primarily, the numbers actually just went up. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. But the numbers went up for they were adjusted for inflation. And so how it would work is that you would be investigated for that one flight. The investigator, he could continue to, I guess he could work with a prosecutor who could then subpoena you and then decide to go on a fishing expedition to find out how many other flights you did. So if Casey were to get investigated, then a prosecutor could see all of his other flights that he did and start saying, hey, well, what about this flight, this flight, this flight? And then you could just rack them all up for each violation, each time you took off and land. So one battery. So how many different violations he's going to try to at least argue maybe that he was just a model aircraft operator and he fell into Part 101. But that's going to be interesting because you're going to be like asking questions. The prosecutor's going to ask questions about, were you flying within any kind of safety guidelines from a community-based organization? He's going to have a hard time maybe answering some of those questions. If he does it, then he's going to get kicked into 107 land, and then for each violation there, that's where it can rack up. So he's going to be flying. It seems like I think he could have potentially been flying in Class Bravo or Delta airspace up there in New York City. So those are at least that's at least one violation. He's going to get a careless and reckless violation at least right there per battery.
So is that,
you can get racked up a lot of numbers there real quick.
Is that two then? So is that two? Have you got the airspace and the careless and reckless?
Well, you could also have. Is the aircraft registered?
Yeah.
Does he have a 107 certificate? I mean, boom, there's 4 right there. I mean, 107 is like a checklist. You go, did he do that? No. Did he do that? No. Oh, there you go. You're done. It's just, you just go write down 107, and whatever's left over, it's times the whatever the cost is, and the fine is per one, and that's per flight, so you can get into some pretty high numbers very rapidly if they really want to.
Right.
Jonathan, for those that would ask the question, because I know that I get this question a lot. So what if he is under a community-based organization flying under other guidelines? What's the difference there? Say like a AMA member.
So let's say he falls into Part 101 land and he's safely operating. Then the FAA is going to have to find something that he was doing for purposes of violating 101. So he was flying in such a way as to endanger the safety of the national airspace. So that's kind of one thing we've kind of discussed and thought about behind the scenes, is that, well, if you can fall into 101, it seems like they can charge you with less violations. But then if you don't fall into that category and you go into 107, then you're going to have a lot more violations potentially at the FAA's disposal to charge you with. So ideally 101 is where you'd want to get charged, but then the FAA is still going to sniff around to find out how many times you violated 101. Like, hey, well, this video, this video, this video, this video. And as they subpoena you, what are you going to do when you get subpoenaed? Right? You're going to do it by yourself. You're going to call an attorney to turn over the documents. So, for instance, I don't even know how to say their last name. The Hawarts or something. The flamethrower kid with the gun and everything up in Connecticut. They subpoenaed the father and the son, and so they asked for all these documents, as admissions. Well, everybody online on Facebook is a Facebook lawyer that seems to know how to do law, yet I never see anybody ever volunteering to help anybody. It always seems to be like they want to give out free advice and nobody ever wants to help. And I don't think people really realize is that being right at the end of the day does not mean that your bills would get paid. And just because you may have a good argument at the end of the day, does that mean another attorney is going to take hours out of his day to go and fix your problem? Because at the end of the day, like, that was your flight, doing your thing, you had your fun, and then you want to like come and call me up and email me and ask me to like somehow bail you out and do a bunch of work for free on my weekends. So I'm some like cheap insurance policy, and you're like, oh, thanks for helping the community, and oh, we love it. Okay, like, stop being stupid, because at the end of the day, you're the one paying the bills. That's like that's the legal advice right there.
So the GoPro Karma video, potentially, depending on exactly which day he filmed that was within a TFR. So the president was in town. I can't remember what the meeting was. Loretta picked that one up. So there was a TFR in force. And when I looked at the map, he was flying within it on the pier. You could clearly identify where he was flying from the video that he showed. So TFR, part 101, part 107, does it matter? Am I in deep doo-doo either way?
I think they would argue. Oh, okay, so backing it out now, depending on which TFR, some of the presidential ones are 99.7 TFRs, which the statute that those were actually done under provides for criminal penalties. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place at that point. He either is flying recklessly, not knowing the TFR is in effect, and he's endangering the safety of the national airspace, or he knew about it and intentionally flew, thus setting himself up for criminal prosecution, which then he can get prosecuted and go to federal prison. Yeah. So he's in a rock and a hard place when that happens. It's like, don't play with TFRs. Like, seriously, check for TFRs before you fly. Please, it's really easy. They got a thing on the FAA's website, and it's free, people. Like,
well, that's spinning it out to Robert's point about what if he was a member of the AMA, because the AMA, I believe, sends emails with TFRs. And so if you're flying under that community-based organization's rules and regulations, you should have seen that email and you'd be briefed, and then you wouldn't be. But you're the lawyer, not me. I think
marginal.
Well, you're on Facebook, right? So you can chime in anytime you want. So jump on in. Come on.
Right.
Of course.
Marginal legal advice. I mean, I think it's going to be easy to yank the Part 101 rug out of most folks, especially on the YouTube and whatever else. Most of these people are doing this because they're trying to make money off of it. It's their living, or they're building a fan base where they're making money off of this. They're monetizing it. So, in that case, you're not following the AMA's guidelines, yank the rug, you're 107, and then we just start, it's like anybody ever get pulled over and get a ticket where they run out of space on the front of the ticket and they're putting it on the back. That ever to anyone besides
me? You failed to put your signal blinker on or whatever, and changing
lanes. Field day, yeah, that was a good one. But anyway, so I mean, I think it's going to be pretty easy to start beating people with the 107 stick. Yank the rug, beat them with the 107 stick. And I think if the FAA, and I'm not advocating, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to hate me for it, but if you want people to sign up for the 107 thing and get their licenses and register and be in compliant, you're going to have to do some enforcement.
Hey, guys, I'm going to have to I've got to leave. I got to go start my community service. No, wait. I've got to go do this.
Where's the jumpsuit?
Yeah, we expect to see you in orange next time.
Don't say that. Man. All right. That's wrong.
Gene, actually, so it's probably actually a very good time because we are beginning to go into rant mode, waffle mode, and we're just coming up on the hour. So it's probably a good time for us all to say farewell, unless anybody else has anything else that's caught their eye this week. Going once, going twice. I can hear the fat lady singing. It's time to say adios. Thanks, guys. That was interesting again, and we should convene again next Tuesday night. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.